Hello and welcome to episode 32. Okay, so today I was writing about how metaphysical constants such as the economy and society connect with a fundamental principle I would say just defined as the market. So, because the market, as we understand it, is definitionally a combination of financial and social behaviour, the overlap between the two of them necessitates a comprehensive philosophical perspective if the market is to be understood as a philosophical constant through the lens of metaphysics. So, if specifying with ontology, so if we could accept the philosophical constants of the economy and society as being similar in principle with that of marketing, the market and marketing being the cosmological consequence of that principle, we then find out that the cosmological phenomena known as marketing, that is consequential from the ontological state of a market, if we accept the premise of this as the consistent behavior between observed and observable constructs, such as humanity and the universe, such as, well, easily interpretable as the strong anthropic force and the weak, and, well, in this case I suppose it would be a strong anthropic force, and the universe being an observable object. So, skimming through, well, if you consider language to be an ontological constant, such as the economy and society, as well as mathematics to be ontological constants, then it's entirely possible. I'm going to type these up because it's faster. Ontological constants, economy, language, market, mathematics, and society. Okay, so trying to zoom in instead of overcomplicating. So if the premise is consistent, then it stands to reason that the consequences of a marketing strategy, such as increased economic behaviour, which is comparable with metaphysical and, of course, the economic principles of energy exchange, money being a conduit of energy. Some definitions are described as labour, some definitions are described as value. However, if we further define the idea of economics beyond if we define economics beyond its core definition of energy exchange to have the additional factor of, no, that's interesting, chemical conversion as a form of energy exchange, as well as economic behaviour, then the three of them connect in a way that enables us to define marketing as cosmological consequence of the ontological state known in metaphysics as the ontology, as well as permitting definition, that's been of marketing practices as cosmological forces and events within the framework of metaphysics. So, if it's definable within the terms of metaphysics as cosmological phenomena, then we can expand from the metaphysically observational states of cosmology and ontology to be inclusive of more ethereal rather than corporeal elements such as axiology, epistemology, and actually I quite like having those here. Epistemology and there it is, teleology. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 7, 0, 0. Okay, so if we expand from the metaphysical elements of philosophy of cosmological phenomena and ontological states as comparative loosely with the ideas of dynamics and mechanics. The mechanics occur within the ontological state, aka the system, and the system dynamics of the ontological state are the cosmological forces, aka phenomena. Then, as a consequence of if the economy is the ontological system and the market is the ontological state, the key differential between an economy and the market is important. So the economy I would describe as the general idea that includes all labour, and the market is more to do with direct monetary behaviour. So for instance, an economy is somewhat inclusive of like job seekers, housewives, students, and people of similar non-directly contributing economic value. I mean, they'll all spend bits of money here and there, I'm sure. The economic literature tends to not study those people as part of the collective unless they're directly studying them. There seems to be a more frequent initiative to define economic behaviour as those who are economically contributing vis-a-vis have a job or a business. So if you have a business, then you're defined differently within the economic literature, definitely from the government and often from the academics. So the market, on the other hand, is more where market behaviour determines the economic landscape as a consequence. So you could argue that the market is more physiological. Ooh, and that's a different idea of which do you consider physicalist or idealist philosophies to be dominant. Personally, I would this match I'm against a 400 engine rapid, apparently 935 correspondence 1240, 1260 roughly. This is a studying channel. If you want to listen and join in with philosophical debates on Lichess, approximately 1,000. I'm not on there super frequently. As I was saying, I might have to turn comments off. Not in a mean way, just so I can focus. Okay, so if we consider the idea of metaphysical constants such as the economy, the market, and society as concepts, and then we'd have to differentiate from the paradigms such as linguistics and mathematics, then we've got a basis for differentiating cosmological effects from ontological effects, but then you'd have to get into why how language and linguistics are differentiated. So how are language and linguistics? Well, language is a concept, and linguistics is the paradigm within it. Maybe. Really? I'd have thought the whole reason I created this V3 pocket. Anyway. Okay. So then if we consider it from a marketing perspective, the initial angle of attack, as it were, is to look at this from the perspective of the marketing mix, because it's a fundamental marketing principle that's consistent throughout any strategy you activate. So whether its application is in somebody starting their own business or somebody working in a marketing department for a startup or an international conglomerate, the marketing mix is a fundamental principle which is consistent. Same as it's Kotler's 4Ps, isn't it? There's another one I had in mind which was really useful. Porter's marketing model. The marketing model. Porter's forces. So if I combine that with Porter's forces as a base to build upon, then we have something to move forward with. That's Porter, and that's Kotler. There are additional there, which we have written down somewhere else. Okay, so if we continue with the idea, then effectively we're finding out how the idea is a consistent construct throughout various linguistic interpretations of the data. So if the various linguistic interpretations of the data define the language as an expression of linguistics, or linguistics as the conduit, language is the conduit of linguistics, in the same sense that narrative is in the form of an identity, because the narrative has to have an identity for it to function, but an identity doesn't necessarily need a narrative beyond its genetic imperative, then what I'm hearing in my mind is the male-female differentiation, and I would argue as a consequence from that, the dominance-submission differentiation, which then infers that there is a more powerful force to the other. So then it's a matter of defining whether or not I'm differentiating those as per my personal perception and perspective on the matter, or if it's a consequence of my interpretation of my private life or my professional life, because I'm personally interpreting it either way. Okay, so I'm now thinking of channel AB Now what we need to do is consider how an ontological construct is consistent throughout every metaphysical domain, because in every metaphysical domain there is an ontology. There has to be. That's the definition of an... So if the ontology is consistent throughout every metaphysical domain, and in every metaphysical domain there are multiple literary devices within the ontology, as such as an economy, a market, and a society, then those three literary devices are vessels of perspective and perception and perspective, because the perception we have of each of them alters our interpretation. So then if we accept that our perception and perspective, pardon me, okay, so let's continue the idea and further that comprehension. So if the comprehension is consistent, so I'm focusing on the chess now because I want to study well, without recognising that what I'm supposed to be studying is marketing. And what I am studying technically is abstraction of marketing. The most important part to remember is that this abstraction of marketing is very unique, very original. It's original. And because it's original, because it's uncharted territory academically speaking, that puts it in good stead for developing the first class honours grading response that I'm looking for. Grade, there we go. Pardon me. And the further I can develop, oh hello, my ontology of marketing vis-a-vis marketing as a precept of metaphysics, and from that derivative of philosophy, to make it... Oh, this is why there's a philosophy of everything, isn't there? Okay, so if we argue that it's the different philosophies that matter, then it just becomes politics. Okay, so if it's just politics, then it's a matter of understanding what marketing strategies are most effective for each demographic and each psychographic and such. So definitely writing those in. Data encoding, demographics, and psychographics. Right. Okay. Bang. Okay, now my brain just wants to play chess. However, brain, you must earn the chess by doing the studying that's relative to the chess. So, the reason the chess is a useful studying conduit is because the duality is inherent to how... Those are all best, fantastic, grand. And that's 20 minutes, so back to box. Level 3. Okay, so metaphysical constructs, metaphysical constants. If we accept that the market is a metaphysical constant, then we additionally accept that its comparative domains of economy and society have validity in that they elucidate the market's behaviour in the context of economics and sociology, which can then be further studied through biology and psychology, and to a degree ecology as well. So if we accept that those generalisms permit us a great deal of insight, then as we permit ourselves a great deal of insight, we can then identify the useful elements for which to further specialise. So, what is worth specialising in? That is a big question here. Metaphysics is fun, and I'm enjoying the consistency of that throughout everything, because no matter how I look at it, I can appreciate the constancy of metaphysics throughout what I'm doing. So if I could appreciate the consistency of metaphysics throughout everything I'm doing, and understand that that is advertising an element of philosophy as part of the brand name of philosophy, because the narrative between the brand names is the narrative between the identities, which is the design before the constructs, or the construction before the designs, and then the implementation of the application, then effectively it gets easier and easier. So construct and design. It's a social construct that follows a design. It's an advertisement for a brand. It's a narrative from an identity and so on. Well, they're all kind of mind-body, that's the thing. That's the thing, do they need to actually be switched around? Okay. So, if we further the idea that, philosophically speaking, it makes sense to define a market as an ontological state, as an ontology, then we can reasonably infer that everything defined within the ontology is a continuation of the marketing state. So then, what becomes necessary is defining the ontological details, such as the cosmological phenomena, that grant us access to higher grading rubrics. Okay, so we need to find more details of what marketing is, so that our definitions of marketing and our definitions and descriptions of marketing That's a unnecessary sacrifice. This looks ugly. Okay. Bang. 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 Yep, rook comes in. Bang. Bang. Oh, that's just silly. Bang. I could just sack the queen, because that is not checkmate, you fool, but that is the pattern I was maybe looking for. So that would bring that down. And you get the checkmate after, however, the correct method is that. Okay, so in review, boom, boom, is 8, 30, 0, 1, 0, 0, 7, 1, 1, 1, 9, 1, 0. Okay. So if that's all correct, that's all going hunky-dory, then I can start doing some more expressive work, which is something I found really helpful. Okay, so what's actually on your mind, Malcolm? Bored? The tricky thing is, you're always somewhat bored of most things. You're not bored of studying because there's an endless world there. You're bored of the social dynamic enforced upon the economy by society, with the desire of stifling economic activity by virtue of demanding society contribute minimal effort to the economy, yet demanding the economy is providing. I'm trying to deliberately project through a conduit so as not to be complaining about something, which is, oh, there's a nice little there. That is nice. So I seek variation in the same way that novelty is sought after in most societies and many economies. To be fair, most economies don't necessarily need novelty if there's consistency going on. The differentiation is that a society almost always wants new things, because I would imagine it's partly to do with, what's the term I'm looking for? It's like acclimation, tolerance, it's not the word, it's similar principle, different word. Saturation, maybe? The point is that eventually you get so acclimated to a specific routine, and then the routine becomes fairly mundane because you've done it so many times. And then because, well, that's an interesting element actually, because what many people define as mundane is very exciting to many other people. And that's the tricky thing, is just because I find it mundane doesn't mean that other people don't find it exciting. In the same sense that I don't find fiction interesting at all. It just isn't. I don't want to read about a story about something that didn't happen and somebody I'm not going to meet, or if I want to learn about social dynamics, then I will speak with people directly, or I'll look into some psychology literature, sociology literature, or something of a similar nature. I don't want to explore that through fiction. And the concept I can hear myself depicting is that which wants novelty and stimulation, yet is completely aware of something I perceive to be unethical as a means of achieving that stimulation, but I also feel that there must be alternatives to that. And the strange thing is I can hear an intrusive thought in my head saying, nope, I disagree because I haven't explored all the alternatives. The question is, why is that the alternative my mind seeks first? Because the others are very, very difficult to activate. What? Let's show me that follow-up. Not entirely sure where it's going. Okay. Boom, boom. I might just get an early night. I've done the 2 games. That's what I need to do. I'm exploring my feelings. I know the thing that bothers me isn't something I'm going to do much about, because it doesn't bother me enough to do the thing about it that I know is the gateway to doing a bunch of other stuff that would arguably cause me more stress than it's solved, and the benefit is not something I feel is in accordance with who I want to be, and that becomes a principle of ethics really at its core. So then, if I ethically disagree with the question in contention, then I'm defining my ethical code of what is and isn't acceptable behaviour. So if I'm defining what is and isn't acceptable behaviour, then I have a habituated system dynamic which can continue throughout every other element of what I'm doing. The tricky thing is that idea of sentence omitted is incredibly inconsistent in almost every other area of society. You're not expected to in every other area of society. It's strange. Sometimes it feels like a behavioural control thing, like a population control. And if it's, well, that's where I suppose where it links in with marketing, and why I find that so interesting is these ideas of behavioural control, behavioural conditioning, population control, societal engineering, all these variants of what are effectively the same principle, which is mind control. It's behaviour modification. It is trying to get people to do things potentially against their will, but it's systems of governance, really. When you really think about it, behaviour modification is a system of governance. Okay. Behavioural conditioning is population control, is social engineering, is governance, is propagandizing, is marketing, is, what would the term be? Propaganda professional? Maybe propaganda as far as I'm aware. There's always sanitizer to cover everything. Hello. It's going fine. Favourite opening? That's different person. I tend to play a lot of Spanish screen openings. I can play Carol can play French defence. I always quite like Catalan, just aesthetically. English opening can be kind of fun. The Dutch defence is quite hilarious, but it's not terrifically reliable against anybody that's a reasonable opposition with a lot of theory. Kings and Unions are always solid. I don't play a lot of Queen's Pawn openings. As in the Catalan really one, that would probably be an interpolation from sort of these guys will start. What about you? I'm aware. Don't worry about it. Yeah, so if we solve that problem, and it's a matter of whether or not I care. That's the tricky thing. I'm not super fast about getting a new microphone, and I haven't found an instruction on whether it fixes it yet. I keep saying I will. I probably should actually get around to looking at that. I just if I care, then I have to accept this as the premise. Would be the ethical definition of what I'm thinking about. And if I don't care, then it doesn't matter, and you just live your life as you see fit, and have fun until the cows come home. question
The question is, why is that?
Is it
Is it just a biological predisposition?
Or is it actually something that cognitively are meant to do? I thought so. Now, oomph. Okay. That is all for this week. We're doing such short episodes to get through the chess faster, which I'm pretty sure means I picked up on the algorithm. Thank you all very much for listening. If you have any questions regarding marketing, mathematics, metaphysics, and or any of the comparative ideas that I'm interested in, linguistics, neuroscience, quite like physics, systems, I could talk about all day and trying to understand them better. Interested in computer science, but I'm not sure if you know about it, so feel free to enlighten me there. And yeah, have a great day, have a great week, great month, season, year, all that. Cheers. Bye.